And today marks Trump's first 100 days as the president of the United States. And he spent the day touting his accomplishments, from reshaping the federal government to his immigration crackdown. We connect with Chris Casquejo over in the U.S. for more. Hello there, Chris.
Good to be with you.
So, Chris, certainly a big day for himself, but how did Trump celebrate his 100th day back in the Oval Office? Walk us through the day.
Right. Well, he just wrapped up a visit to the state of Michigan, the battleground state of Michigan, a Detroit suburb called Warren, Michigan, where he gave a speech at a rally before a crowd of 4,000 people at Macomb Community College. And on the stage, he leaned heavily into his signature themes. It actually felt like a campaign speech, and Trump at one point said that he missed the campaign, leaning heavily into his border enforcement, economic pride, and his America First themes. He actually showed a video of gang members, supposed gang members, that have been deported to that controversial prison in El Salvador. Now, he also used the moment, as you mentioned, to talk about his pause on auto tariffs, which we'll get into more later. And earlier in the day, he visited Selfridge Air National Guard Base, where he, along with Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, announced that there would be a plan to send 21 new F-15EX fighter jets to the site, replacing some of the older jets that were scheduled to go out of service at this very important Air National Guard base in suburban Detroit, Michigan. But there was no formal celebration at the White House, we should note.
Well, like I said, this is his second time celebrating his 100 days in the Oval Office. And the past 100 days were sharply different from the same period of his first term, weren't they?
Right. And I think you have to think of Trump's 100 days this time around when you mention all these things, but definitely talk about all the executive orders, close to 140 of them, which is more than double the rate of executive orders in his first term, and the wide latitude he's given Elon Musk to cut the federal government, with the Department of Government Efficiency and DOGE. So DOGE has made steep cuts across federal agencies, including the closure of the Department of Education, and a couple of 100,000 federal workers are now looking for new jobs. Now, while Trump's first term was dominated by rallies and a lot of back and forth with the media, he's kept a much lower profile. He's been at his Mar-a-Lago estate 12 of the past 14 weekends, and he also, but he did make the trip this past weekend to attend Pope Francis's funeral with other world leaders.
Right. Well, Chris, we have to talk about Trump's approval rating. Just last week, that reached the lowest for any newly elected president after 100 days, something Trump called fake news. Has he managed to overturn that poor rating over the past week?
No, we haven't seen any bounce in the polls. His approval rating sits at 40% with 59% disapproval. And again, that's the lowest 100-day mark for a U.S. president in decades. Among independents, his support continues to erode, and he dismissed, as you said, these polls as fake news. But the divide is really deep here. His base is still with him, but the broader electorate remains really concerned about high prices and inflation. So the economy is a big issue, and immigration is a big issue. Right. On the economy, his approval is down to 37%. And voters are getting frustrated with rising prices and the uncertainty, which caused world markets to roil around tariffs. On immigration, only 34% approve of his approach, while 48% say it goes too far. Now, among Hispanic voters, support has fallen sharply from 46% in 2024 to just 34% now.
Chris, let's go back to the auto tariffs being adjusted on this 100th day. Now, Trump said he decided to soften auto tariffs, which will be a big relief for that specific industry. But we did see this coming, right?
Yeah, the important thing to note here is there are not going to be stacked tariffs on U.S. autos. Automakers already pay an auto tariff, will not pay extra tariffs on steel and aluminum. U.S. car makers who build domestically get a temporary rebate, 3.75% of the vehicle's value this year and 2.5% next year. Now, this came after intense pressure from the Michigan automakers and labor unions who warned that tens of thousands of jobs were at risk. And that may be why Trump chose to spend the end of his 100th day in office in that battleground state of Michigan. Now, this move is being framed as economic support by the administration, but many also see it as damage control, to pivot, this pivot to calm the growing unrest among those labor unions, and those auto workers in states like Michigan.
Right. Chris, before I let you go, Representative Sri Thanadar on Monday filed articles of impeachment against President Trump. Now, this is the first time this year a House Democrats try to impeach the leader or even a member of his administration, right?
Yeah, this is a second-term Michigan congressman who's a Democrat, Sri Thanadar, and he says Trump has abused his power and undermined democratic norms. But let's be real, it stands no chance of advancing in the Republican-controlled House and Senate, and it's largely symbolic. But it shows that there is growing discontent, and on the Democratic side, for sure, especially with Trump's moves on immigration. There's that immigrant, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was sent in an administrative error. The administration admits to that prison in El Salvador, and Democratic Congress people have been going to visit him to make sure he's okay. And then also, whether any Republicans will step forward if the economic storm continues to brew around the uncertainty around tariffs. Will more Republican congressmen step forward to say, hey, President Trump, these tariffs aren't a good idea. Maybe we should pause or back off a little. But so far, there has been little sign of that. Republicans are plowing forward on their plans to put some of Trump's budget cuts into action and into law.
Right. It's going to be a little push to challenge Trump, but definitely, like you said, symbolic. Chris, it was good to see you again. Thank you so much for connecting with us.
Yeah, you too. See you soon.